Hello and welcome to Melomaniax, the podcast where we take deep dives to let's do that again. It fucking swapped my letters. Unbiased deep dives. Why did that get swapped? I'm over here reading, even though I have this shit in my fucking head. All right. God. Fuck it. We'll do it live. Fuck it. All right. Yeah. Well, I don't even understand why it was backwards. It literally was like, as we take deep, unbiased dives instead of the. That's not what I always say. I always say unbiased deep dives, but that's all right. It's all right. It just wanted to fuck with me. I got it. All right, here we go. Composure. Hello and welcome to Melomaniax, the podcast where we take unbiased deep dives into the biggest musicians and bands of all time. I'm your host, Ashton.
And I'm Dallas. Before we get started today, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Give us a follow there. Most importantly, if you could drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, that's going to help us grow, keep this show going as long as we can. And if you really want to support the show, check out our Patreon for just $5 a month. That's going to get you access to our private Discord, a shout out in an episode, and the power to pitch your own topic to the show. So that's out of the way. Let's get into today's episode.
All right, so let's set the scene a little bit. It's the early 1980s. Ronald Reagan's in office. Parachute pants are still fashionable. And MTV just started turning musicians into gods. And then bursting out of San Francisco like a saxophone solo in a power suit comes Huey Lewis in the news. That's right. This is, I think I've mentioned it on previous episodes before. This is the very first band I ever just did a full discography listen before I started this. Before we started this podcast, I was just like, you know what? I knew a little bit about them from you telling me, like, hey, do you know Huey Lewis and the News? They're really good. And I was like, I don't think I know them.
I still don't think I've heard a bad song.
Yeah, and so I dove in back then, listened to the whole discography, re-listened to this time, and that was kind of like my idea because of the podcast I was listening to at the time, and then I listened to the discography, and then it all came together, and I was like, the idea for our podcast. But Huey Lewis and the News kind of started it all, even though they weren't the first episode. They were just they were an inspirational listen back then. So it's finally it's nice to finally get down to doing Huey Lewis and the News. Love it.
Yep. Couldn't be more excited. Love these guys.
Yep, they're great. And we might make many jokes about Huey Lewis and insert any random name. I don't know why. It's just so much funnier. There's other bands that have the same like name configuration where it's like a main person's name followed by the group of the rest of the musicians. You used to always write down a bunch of funny ones for those, right?
For band names?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you what we're up to.
Yeah, that list is ever evolving.
Well, we add to it every day, definitely every week. We are at number 299 will be the next one we come up with.
Oh my lord, almost 300. You need to have like a party.
Do you want to hear number 298?
Yes.
Boy Toy Fuck Boy.
What the? Jeez.
How about Side Eye Cyanide?
Side Eye Cyanide.
Bones for Bone.
Bones for Bone.
Viagra Falls.
Jesus.
We have hundreds of them.
There's so many, and all so awful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, some of them we can't even say.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, we'll get back talking about, let's get into this. So, you know the sound. It's rock, it's pop, it's soul, it's whatever you're hearing when your uncle cracks open a Bud Light in 1984. These guys weren't just another 80s band. They were the everyman's band with killer harmonies, crisp production. Talking is so hard. Very difficult task. Haven't spent 32 years practicing it, but that's okay. Well, actually, I guess 31. Talking right out of the womb.
Burst out. Yo, what up?
Yo, what up?
It's like, whoa, he's got an accent and everything.
Yeah. And then,
Where the ladies at?
jeez, this kid's a killer. That's my son. That's my boy.
You already have like the Hollywood haircut, the aviators and everything.
Yeah, dude. Anyways, crisp production, easy words to say, and just the right touch of dad joke energy. You know, they ruled the charts in the 80s and became cultural icons, and their music wasn't just catchy, it was everywhere. Movies, commercials, school dances, even your mom's workout tape. Nowadays, I still hear them in grocery stores and whatnot. I know they have a lot of modern pop, but Huey Lewis and the News, I still consistently hear on radios and soundtracks for stores. So they are still definitely popular.
Still killing it. But behind the khakis and keyboard hooks lies a wild story, and that's why we're here. Complete with bar fights, lawsuits, drugs, abandoned albums, and time-traveling DeLoreans. Who are these guys? How did they become such a beloved and weirdly underappreciated part of American music history? Let's rewind that cassette and find out by taking it all the way back to the beginning.
So Huey Lewis, born Hugh Anthony Craig III, because of course that's his name, was raised in Marin County, California. His dad was a doctor, and his mom was a beatnik who hung out with poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Oh, I killed that name.
Sounded good to me.
Yeah, so little Huey grew up a perfect storm of intellect and counterculture, and he was smart. Smart enough he got a 1500 on his SAT and actually got into Cornell University with Andy from The Office. I can never see Cornell without thinking of Andy.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
1500 is wild. I think 1600 is the max.
I think so too. Yeah, unless they've changed it since we went to school. But
well, they added the writing portion, which was a whole other rating, so it brought the whole thing up to like 2400. But that's kind of like not the traditional SAT.
That's right. Just the
1600, I think, was the max.
Yeah, so he's a very, very smart guy.
Oh yeah, you're considered smart if you get like 12 to 1300. So he's like top of the class smart.
Yeah. But he did not stay in college for long because anybody who's heard the heart of rock and roll can tell you music was calling his name, and school was not the place for him. So
seems like it worked out. So Lewis traveled the world with his harmonica, busking across Europe, and legend has it he snuck into the back of a plane to hitch a ride back to the U.S. That's rock and roll. Couldn't do that today, probably. I'd have a few questions. What's in your bag? A harmonica? Let me open up that harmonica. What you got there? Back in San Francisco, though, he joined a jazz funk band called Clover in the early 70s. And that group eventually wound up in the UK, recording an album with a then unknown producer named Mutt Lange, one of the most famous producers of all time. We were just talking about him the other day. He's the guy behind AC/DC's Back in Black, most of Def Leppard, and eventually Shania Twain, who he ended up marrying, which was pretty cool. Cool story. Legendary guy.
I feel like he literally popped up like 2 episodes ago also.
Probably, yeah. But that band Clover fell apart just before punk exploded in London, so that's bad timing. But Huey brought that experience home, hooked up with some Bay Area musicians, and formed Huey Lewis and the American Express, a name that definitely got them almost sued by Kiss. Just kidding. American Express. So they rebranded as Huey Lewis and the News. Should have been Huey Lewis and the Lawsuits. That would have been cool.
Right. Huey
That's
Lewis
actually kind of a cool name, actually.
I actually like that. Yeah. Wait a second. He's on to something.
Hold on. I'm cutting that out of the podcast.
Well, yeah. Cut that out so we can keep that.
I'm going to add to my band list right now, Big D and the Lawsuits.
Big D and the Lawsuits. Oh, I love that. Oh, so good. I just want to go on like a whole thing. Huey Lewis and the Capital One. Huey Lewis and the just Huey Lewis and the Chase. Yeah,
dude, that's actually good. Come on, some of these are good.
Yeah.
So we have real quick as a funny little side note, we have a lot of names in here that are something and the something. So we got Beef James in the meat section.
Oh,
we got Dumpster Dan and the Janitors. Sneeko Jones and the Menace. Steve Twerkle in the Family Matter.
Oh, that's so good.
We got some bad ones here. Backhand Roy and the Suffrage Boys.
Oh no. Oh gosh.
I think that's enough for now. Oh, Ronald
Yeah.
Buffalo and the Saviors.
Oh man. Those are good. I like those.
Ashtray and the Cigarette Butts.
Oh man. That so much in that one. So many plays on words.
There's some weird ones for sure.
Anyways,
Jimmy Toucan and the Flip Out is the last one.
Jimmy Toucan and the Flip Out. Nice. Jeez.
Wild.
I just love that like setup
It's
of
such
the
a good
band
format.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, the format of band names for that is so good.
But we're back to Huey Lewis and the lawsuits.
Yep. So anyways, they released their self-titled debut album on June 25th, 1980, and it completely flew under the radar. Didn't even chart on the Billboard 200. There were no major radio hits. The only single to get any attention was Some of My Lies Are True, parentheses, Sooner or Later, which had a tiny bit of play on the rock radio, but became more of a cult favorite over time. This album is mostly remembered by hardcore fans who like to see where it all started. And as for my 2 cents, it's pretty skippable. You can tell they hadn't we've talked about some bands here that just come out hot where their first album is their best album. But then you have other bands that come out and their first album, you can tell they still haven't found who they are, if that makes sense. They're like on the cusp, but it's not quite their sound. And that's kind of how this album was. You kind of listen to it and you're like, I mean, it sounds like the band, but their song style, the writing style just hasn't quite like struck iron, like got hot yet. So this album is, yeah, you can skip it. Just skip it. Go straight to the second one. It's way better.
And that brings us to Picture This, which the band came back swinging with Picture This, released on January 29th, 1982. That debuted at number 110 on the Billboard 200, but eventually climbed all the way up to number 13 after the breakout success of its singles. The album sold over 1 million copies and went gold in the U.S. It had 3 singles. The first was Do You Believe in Love, written by Mutt Lange, which became their first top 10 hit and peaked at number 7. Mutt knows what he's doing, man. And the second single was Hope You Love Me Like You Say You Do, which hit number 36. Final single was Working for a Living, which peaked at number 41. That one became a fan favorite and later actually got a country duet remix with Garth Brooks. As we were talking about Mutt Lange here, I'm thinking we should maybe do a couple like producer episodes. We did Max Martin, who's a writer, but we should do a couple producers like Mutt Lange who have done so much stuff because their careers are just wild. As a side note.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. I mean, we've broken out of the norm and done, Max Martin, who does songwriting, and then John Williams, who isn't exactly on par with like bands and stuff. So I kind of like breaking out of the normal. So we should definitely do a producer episode. Hit like there's
so many good ones too.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm sure there's actually probably enough info on a lot of these producers for them to have their own episodes. So
yeah,
we'll have to look.
And they pop up in a ton of different band episodes as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know a little bit of Mutt Lange just from what you've said, but it'd be cool to have a little more context to put with the name. Sounds like he has a pretty legendary career.
Just imagine his paychecks that are still coming in for being a part of Back in Black, which I think is one of the top 5, if not higher, selling albums of all time. And then Shania Twain, like Man, I Feel Like a Woman, like all her hits, that was all him. And then Def Leppard, all their big hits were all him. Like that Def Leppard sound is pretty much Mutt Lange, like that's his like handprint on them with all the backing vocals and all the craziness going on there. And then of course tons of others as well, but just those 3 right there, imagine the checks coming in,
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. Yeah,
you're talking like millions of dollars in royalties,
in royalties
every
alone.
4 months, every 3 months, just hitting his account, like, and he's just sitting on a beach somewhere. Like,
I have a weird question. Can royalties be passed down in a will?
I don't know. I think probably, like, Prince passed, and I'm sure his family inherited his estate and all that, and that's probably part of it.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I wonder if royalties like count towards that, or if
I wonder if you can just gift them to people.
Yeah, that too. I just
That'd
don't know
be wild.
I don't know the legal entity of royalties. Basically,
Yeah, me either.
I'd have to look into it.
It gets pretty complicated pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to write that down and research it though. All right. We are moving on. Oh, also, I wanted to mention I didn't really put anything for touring, but basically, after the second album, Huey Lewis and the News toured like 70 shows a year until 2018. So
Wow.
they stayed touring. They stayed busy between every single album, nothing but touring. So I just wanted to mention that.
70 shows a year feels pretty manageable. Like I
It's
assume
not
if it's
so
a
bad.
proper tour, then you could probably get that done pretty quickly. But it's like a 3-month tour every year, maybe a little less. Or you could do like weekends. That'd be a little bit more than weekends. Which I see a lot of artists are doing now. Like big artists that can afford it. If you look at their touring schedule, it's just like Friday, Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Friday, Saturday. It's like that's the way to do it.
Just a Friday, Saturday. I can see somebody doing like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday as well.
Yeah,
If you wanted
that would
to
put
get,
you in the 70 range, a little more, I guess.
yeah, that's
You
what I
got
was like.
52 weeks in a
Right
year,
around there.
so.
But anyways, let's talk
Well,
about.
actually, even so, yeah. If you had 52 weeks a year, that's 104 weekend days if you count Fridays and Saturdays. So that's, I mean, if you just do Fridays and Saturdays, you're already way over
You're
70.
over 100. Yeah,
So 70 is not a tremendous amount, but that's like a nice steady amount to like constantly be out there, but still have a lot of time to recharge and write and record.
yeah. They had a good schedule. That when people were applying to that band, flexible schedule was one of the things they were promoting.
Unlimited PTO.
Yeah, well, exactly. Of treating the band as a business. It's so great.
Yeah, so funny. That's true though. That's how it works at a level. It is. That's what it is. It's a business.
Yeah, no sick days though. Well, you have to sometimes. Singers always get sick days. Nobody else
Our
is
sick
allowed
policy
sick days.
is shut up and play the show. That's
What about
the sick policy?
What about you with the vocals when the vocals aren't there from sickness?
Sometimes you have to just decide if you can push through it or if you have to call it. Yeah, that gets called for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with Picture This in the past, kind of helped them break onto the scene a little more than their debut album. So sophomore album, much better. Let's go into their third album, which definitely helped them take over pop music. And their third album was Sports, which dropped on September 15th, 1983. It debuted modestly, but eventually reached number one on the Billboard 200 and sold over 10 million copies in the US alone. So this album was absolutely everywhere in the mid 80s. This is like peak mid 80s radio right here. You get in your car, turn on the radio, Huey Lewis and the News was playing, most likely. So this album had 5 singles. The first was Heart and Soul, which peaked at number 8. The second was I Want a New Drug, which went all the way to number 6 and later sparked a lawsuit over it due to the similarity to the Ghostbusters theme. To clarify real quick, we're going to talk about more of that in our bonus episode for those Patreon listeners. But Huey Lewis's song came out first, then the Ghostbusters theme came out. Just wanted to get that clarified for everybody.
So it could not have possibly been ripped off.
Yeah, exactly.
If it came out first.
So, well,
unless they could prove that the Ghostbusters one was written first.
No, so the lawsuit was Huey Lewis and the News suing the guy who wrote the Ghostbusters theme.
Okay.
Yes.
I misunderstood.
They sued them. The third single was The Heart of Rock and Roll, which another number 6 hit. The fourth single, If This Is It, also hit number 6. Just tons of sixes, just rotating on number 6. That's just, they own number 6 on the Billboard Top 100. And then the final single,
just spiting the fact that they just can never say they had a top 5.
I know. Just right there at 6.
We've had 18 top 6 singles and 0 top 5 singles.
Oh God. Oh, that'd be
all 18 of those were number 6.
So
yep.
cursed. The final
you see
single,
though, stacking up a lot of 6s though gets you a number 1 album. That's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because top 10s at the end of the day are not, they're equally as important. If you have a lot of top 10s, it's still a lot of success. And the final single was Walking on a Thin Line, which only reached number 18. but became a staple in their live shows. And this album is what really turned them into megastars. This is the one that launched their music careers, you know, put them in the clouds. No sneezing allowed on the podcast.
Yeah, I think I muted it in time though. So after this album in 1985, the band participated in the All-Star USA for Africa charity song. And that was We Are the World. Everybody knows this song. Huey actually got himself a solo vocal in that song, which is saying something because there was like 16 artists, like the biggest artists were all in this thing. They were also supposed to go on the Philadelphia leg of the Live Aid benefit concert that followed, but the band pulled out 2 weeks prior over concerns that the money being raised from the concert wasn't actually going to help Ethiopian famine victims, and it for sure wasn't. Charity never works good. And they received heavy criticism from the charity organizer, Harry Belafonte. And a year later, an article came out talking about how most of the money raised was misspent. Yeah, so it's like...
So they...
And I guarantee you nobody went back to Huey and was like, you were right, we're sorry. Like, nobody did that.
Right. But yeah...
It's so frustrating. That happens with pretty much any charity. If you go really dig into it, it's not good. I think they had said something like, on average, only like 10%. Like if you give $1 to a charity, only about 10 cents of that's going to where you think it's going.
Yeah, because all the nonprofits have to take their profits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. How are you running a nonprofit and you're living in a mansion in Beverly Hills?
I was going to say, if for anybody out there that ever hears nonprofit, immediately ignore those words because that doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a nonprofit organization that runs off of pure sponsorships.
But they're sneaky because they name themselves things like, love your neighbor, or like save the children, or, food for Africa. They name these things that you're like, well, that sounds good. I'll give money to that. Like, you know what I mean? But you don't ever really bother to look into it, and they're just scamming you.
Yeah.
Because they got a catchy name and a nice logo and prints to sing on the thing. It's like, oh, it must be good, It's like, nah, not really.
No, most of the time.
And that's not true. That's not just true of this time. That's true today.
Yeah, so it's
always been that way.
Yep. So also in 1985 just being a big year for them, Huey Lewis and the News landed another Billboard topping hit. Well, actually, I guess their first, huh? The Power of Love hit #1, and that was featured in the hit movie Back to the Future. So, and Huey actually had a cameo appearance in the film, playing as a faculty member who rejects Marty McFly's band's audition for the school's Battle of the Bands. Immediately stopping him, saying, "You guys are just too loud," which is funny because that was kind of like Huey and them's thing. And so the song "The Power of Love" would be released on the movie soundtrack, as well as only the international copies of the album 4, which was weird. So I guess it's because Back to the Future was so big in America, you didn't need to put it on the album. And then speaking of that album, let's talk about it right now.
4. It should be noted, if you're just listening, it's spelled FORE! Even though it's their 4th album, correct? If I've been counting right.
It is.
So it's kind of a little clever play on words there. So they released 4 on August 20th, 1986, and it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 3 million copies in the U.S. So this was their second huge commercial success, and this album had 5 major singles. Let's go through them now. First was Stuck With You, which hit #1. Nice. Second was Hip to Be Square. Everybody knows that one, which peaked at #3. Later became infamous thanks to the movie American Psycho. And the third single was Jacob's Ladder, another #1 hit. The fourth was I Know What I Like, which peaked at #9. The final single was Doing It All for My Baby, which hit #6. And at this point, Huey Lewis and the News were about as mainstream as a band could get. 5 of their singles off their #1 album are in the top 10. So,
dude, I can't
2 of them are #1s.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that this album was outperformed by Sports. And I know Sports is great, and Sports is a great album start to finish, no skips. But I also feel like 4 is a great album, no skips. And 4 had #1 singles on it. Like,
wait, you said Sports did better than this one? Doesn't look like it did.
The 4 did
10 million copies. I see.
10 million to the 3 million. That blows my mind, because this one had better performing chart. Like it performed better on the charts. But
a lot of those
Sports
sales are
going to
be coming from. It's just coming from the Back to the Future, craziness, I would imagine.
Yeah, that is true. Because at the time that song came out, 4 wasn't released yet. So the only thing they could buy is the
So
most
yeah,
recent album
everybody's
to come
rushing out
out.
to get. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when you have things like that kind of coincide, everything gets better.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like here's a good example of how this works in practice. There's our agency, East Coast. They do this thing called Open Air Live, where bands will go in and perform, and it's filmed and then mixed and all that stuff and released. And one of their, if you look at all the views that they have on all those, it's like in the thousands. But one of them had like 250,000, just one song by one band. You know, all the other songs that band didn't have anywhere near that. And so I started looking around digging, and it was the same song that had just been recently like prominently featured in like a massive Netflix show. I can't remember the details about it, but I remember seeing that and being like, oh, okay. So Netflix has this massive show. This song is prominently featured. That song ends up in the zeitgeist. Everyone's Googling it, the algorithm, whatever. And they just happen to cover that song and drop it at that time. So it's like, that's how that stuff kind of works. It's just luck, kind of like, oh, wow, we've always done this song. It just so happens to be like, popular right now again.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I think it was like an Aretha
sense.
Franklin cover or something.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
Anyway, back to Huey Lewis. That's kind of, I would assume, what definitely didn't hurt him. I'll say that.
Yeah, it wasn't
it's not to say that it's solely responsible, but it did not hurt to have one of the biggest movies of all time,
Yeah, and it's not like this album failed. It was another successful album. I just, before I dove into the research, just from my own opinion, I thought 4 would be their biggest album, not Sports.
Yeah.
But they were both really big and hold most of their hits are on these 2 albums, so it makes sense. I lean towards 4 because I love the song "Hip to Be Square." It's like one of my favorite songs by them, so I lean more towards 4. But I definitely enjoyed listening to Sports. Like both those albums are just start to finish, no skips for me, so that's great.
Is Back in Time on one of those, or is that coming later?
I'm trying to remember. Back in Time. Oh no, Back in Time was written with The Power of Love for
the first Back to the Future.
Yes, or Back in Time is on. It appears on one of the Back to the Future soundtracks, not an actual album of theirs.
That's got to be like one of the best songs written for a movie. Like just the like clever lyrics that directly relate to the movie, but also relate to anyone listening that hasn't seen the movie. And it's just got their classic like sound, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, that was the other song. That was they wrote that and The Power of Love for Back to the Future. So pretty successful songs for the movies. And then, like we said, "Hip to Be Square" lands itself in American Psycho. So they have some big hits and some big movies.
They got a nice licensing agency for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So looks like they've been doing about an album every year and a half to 2 years. So 2 years after 4, that's going to bring us to their newest one at the time, "Small World."
Yep. And they Small World released on August 30th, 1988. Debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 and actually went gold. Sold about 500,000 copies in the US, so not nearly as big as the previous 2. This album was a critical misfire and didn't have the same punch, but also like following 2 really successful albums, you kind of could, based on history, see this coming.
Down. Yeah.
If
you get to the top, there's only one way to go.
Yep. And so it had only 3 singles. The first was "Perfect World," which did well, peaked at number 3, so not bad. The second was "Small World Part 1," which only reached number 25. And the final single was "Give Me the Keys and I'll Drive You Crazy," which didn't even break the top 40, stalling at number 47. This album marked the beginning of the commercial decline that we were talking about that every band goes through. I can't.
If you're lucky enough to go through it.
How many? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. How many bands? There was one I thought we talked about where they just quit after it was Simon and Garfunkel. They just, after their biggest album, they walked away.
But it seems like it was their choice, but it wasn't like the cool mic drop choice.
Yeah.
It seemed more like he wanted, Garfunkel wanted to do movies. Simon wanted to do his own thing. They weren't getting along. It was kind of like, we can't make this work,
Yeah, it's like but also you don't want to just quit after your big album because
Well, most people don't.
I don't think you want to accept like, oh, this is my peak. Like you're like, I can go higher, and then when you don't hit that, you're like, okay, I did peak. All right, I see.
Well, I think most musicians don't really think about it that way. We
Probably
leave
not.
all that stuff to the business people, all the suits and all the bean counters. They
Ah,
handle all that peaking and numbers and stuff. We just want to write music. And that's kind of how most artists, I think, feel about that.
mm,
Some, I'm sure, don't. You have your Gene Simmons and your Paul Simons and stuff out there, but most people are just like, well, Bruce Springsteen's a great example. He's just going to write another album, and it's going to be whatever he wants to do at this point.
whatever
Maybe
it
it's an
is.
acoustic thing. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's no band. Maybe it's full band. Just want to create and try new stuff and keep doing it. Because the thing no one will tell you is like we'll do this for free, and a lot of us have for a long time. So it doesn't matter if it hits number one or doesn't chart or nobody heard it. Like it's just about making it.
Mm, the artistry.
Yeah, and a lot of times the business gets in the way of the artistry. That's the whole thing that a lot of artists don't like.
Because they have to implement the business side of things into the artistry, and the two don't necessarily always mix that well.
Yeah. Well, let me blow your mind here. I may have told you this already, but I'll tell you for the podcast. I was listening to a Jelly Roll interview. He was breaking this down. He's a smart dude and really business savvy. So the way record labels work, you think that's the goal. Like, let's go get a record label, and then we'll made it, right? That's kind of the thing that people think.
Mhm.
So record label's basically like a bank that's going to loan you money with just the absolute worst interest and like payback plan of all time. Like a bank would be way better. Just go to a bank and get money. Be way better. But the way it works is like they'll split, let's say a 70-30 split. You the artists get 30, I the label get 70. And that's a really generous split, actually. Those are hard to find these days. And what that means is every dollar you make, I'm going to get 70 cents of, and you're going to get 30 cents of, which sounds weird, but I'm going to be paying for your album. I'm going to be paying for your marketing. I'm going to be paying for your tutoring or your touring. I'm going to be doing all this stuff. So you don't have to worry about that, but I'm going to need to be compensated for that. And I'm going to give you $1 million advance now to get started. And you can, I'm loaning you that money so you can go out and do what you need to do to get rolling. And what you have to do at that point is when that million's gone, whether you spend it on drugs or studio time, you have to pay that back to the label. That's a loan they gave you. So that's fine. Most people understand that. That's not the weird part. You have to pay back your million before you make, anything on top of that. Now here's where it gets really nasty. You pay back that $1 million at the rate of the deal. So when you make $1, the label goes, all right, well, you made $1. I take my 70 cents out of that dollar, and that's mine. And now you pay me that 30 cents back towards your million. So you've paid 30 cents toward your million, not $1. And so you have to essentially, if you want to make $1 million, you essentially have to gross like 8 or 9 million before you make your million, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the label's making all your money. Now, also, we're operating on a 70-30 split, which is uncommon. They go as high as 95-5. So when you see artists like get on a label and stuff, you could see artists that are playing sold out rooms around the country and they're absolutely broke and they're failing miserably, but it really looks like they're doing well. It's such a tricky, like nasty world.
Yeah, honestly, I'm surprised that no big banks have kind of like created like, when you go into a bank, they have like a specialist for like mortgages and home loans. You have one for opening businesses. They have these loan officers that specialize in different things. I'm surprised that the big banks haven't just created a position for bands. I know the high risk and stuff, but like
it's
like
way too high a risk. It's
the late,
almost a certainty that they're not ever going to see that money again.
yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, but banks live off of people not making payments, dude. Those interests,
Yeah.
that's how they kill people. But
Yeah, but if you're just charging interest to someone, it's a number going up on a screen. You're not actually ever seeing that money. Like, there's no point.
so then is the reason that labels have such bad interest returns on the money is because they provide marketing as well? Or is that
They'll pay for a lot of your stuff, yeah, and they can break artists for sure. That's what they do. That's their job. The problem comes in if they have 100 artists on their roster and you're one of them and you're the new guy. Like, well, who's gonna get the new guy? It's gonna be the new intern that's there for the summer and doesn't really know what he's doing, doesn't really care. I'd rather work with Taylor Swift. I don't want to work with this new band, you know. And
Yeah,
and a lot of times you can get signed, they own your music, and then they'll shelve you and not do anything. So basically, you just gave away your music and are told to just sit down and shut up, and you can't write anything else because they own that too. You can't you're really really screwed.
yeah. Music labels suck.
Oh yeah, for sure. But everybody's like, I got to get signed. It's like you do not. Thankfully now it's changing, and independent artists are on the rise, and you can increasingly tell labels to kick rocks.
Yeah. Thank you, YouTube and Instagram and social media.
Yep. You can break yourself, and then the labels come crawling to your door, and you can be like, nah, not good enough.
Yeah, and then you can if you have the label coming to you, and especially nowadays, like you really can like do a contract on your terms and not theirs.
The problem is if you have the label coming to you, then you're in a really good spot, because that means you're doing something right. Why would you, if I'm coming to you wanting a piece, it's because I know you have a lot more to make. So that's a good sign. And if all they're offering is marketing, just go find your own marketing team, pay them.
Yeah, cut out the middleman.
Yeah, you don't need them just taking all your money. Now, if you're big enough, you can do licensing deal, which is what we've talked about before, which is essentially the label rents your music from you. Those are the most powerful deals and best deals for the artist, and also the hardest to get, because they're not going to even consider that unless you're, massively successful on your own. Sleep Token did it. Periphery did it. There's like that level.
Okay.
Anyway, let's get back to Huey Lewis. That was a good little rant on the business, though, and why it can be nasty.
All right, we'll talk about their 6th album,
Hard at Play.
So, yeah.
So, following that kind of every 2 year schedule, this one comes a little bit later. This one's about 3 years, 2.5. And Huey Lewis and the News released Hard at Play, and that came out May 7th, 91. And it debuted at number 27 on the Billboard 200 and did go gold. It had 2 singles. The first was Couple Days Off, which made it to number 11. Nice. Got decent radio play there, too. And the second was It Hit Me Like a Hammer. Oop, hiccup. Which hit number 21. This album tried to recapture their old magic, but the grunge wave was already in full swing, and that kind of shut everything down. So the mainstream was moving on to Nirvana and flannels and out-of-tune guitars and stuff. So that's kind of affected Huey Lewis as well as Skid Row and all the others.
Yep, you either adapted or you just
you couldn't just like adapt to grunge. It was just something that came up. Like if Huey Lewis put out a grunge album, like no one will buy that. Bro, so it's like you can't adapt to that. You have to just kind of let the wave ride. And it was a fast wave too. It was gone by Kurt killed himself in 94. So 91 to 94, and it's gone. Yeah,
it was like not even 5 years of grunge.
And I mean, of course, it's still around. It's still big music, but it's like it was a quick ride. Same with any real genre. They don't stick around too terribly long, at their peak.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like 10 years is probably like a super generous amount of time for a genre to stay hot. Yeah. 5 years is more realistic. For how long before the next evolution of whatever comes along. So that's a good point. So now we have moving on. They take another 3 years before their next album, almost exactly 3 years too, which is kind of funny. And that was a cover album that came out May 10th, 1994, called 4 Chords and Several Years Ago. A little play on words. And
every band does a cover album late in their career, don't they?
Dude, right? That's at that point where like
if you're like, ideas. Let's do the cover album, that's when you're like, all right, let's take this year off.
Yeah. We're out of ideas. We need to draw some inspiration. Maybe we will from playing other people's music again. So
nothing wrong with covers, but a whole album of them is a little odd to me.
There's occasional cover albums by bands I like. I like Weezer's cover album for some reason. Interesting enough. But yeah, not often are cover albums that great.
I love a cover song. I do not want a cover album.
Yeah, they're very different there. One cover song, awesome. A whole cover album, bruh.
Sprinkle a few in, but like I want to hear you too,
Yeah. So, four chords and several years ago, it was a throwback to the classic 1950s and 60s R&B songs the band loved growing up. It only reached number 55 on the Billboard 200 and didn't go gold. The first single was parentheses She's Some Kind of Wonderful, which peaked at number 44. The second
Grand Funk.
single, But It's All Right, got some minor airplay but didn't crack the Hot 100. And this one was more of a passion project than meant for commercial play. So that album was for the band, not really for the listeners.
Yeah,
Although
I feel
I'm
like
sure,
most cover albums are probably that way.
yeah, although I'm sure hardcore Huey Lewis and the News fans probably love this album to death. So
I bet they did a fantastic job. Yeah.
yeah, no, it was great. Like I listened through it twice now. I mean the covers are good. It's just like Huey Lewis and the News and some older songs. It's good. It's just, it's not like them, or as far as like nothing original, nothing super stand out. And also during the mid 90s, the band went through some personnel changes. Bass player Mario Cipollina, I believe that is.
Cipollina
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
Cipollina, yeah. He left the band in 95, was replaced by John Pierce. Also, the band used Tower of Power as their touring horn section. I don't know why I can't put words together today. And I saw Tower of Power. They opened for
With me,
Steve
Journey.
Miller. Oh, was it Journey? I've seen him twice.
Journey,
then,
Steve
dude.
Miller Band, Tower of Power.
Yeah, okay, I was like, I saw him with. I know they were opening for Steve Miller Band. Yeah, I guess they.
Yeah, we
for
saw
Journey
Tower of Power
too.
was first, Steve Miller Band was second, Journey was third.
That's right. It was all three in one show.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was like, I think
We
Tower
talked to
of
the
Power
singer for a
opened them.
second, remember?
Oh, that's right, dude. That's one of the
They're so good.
concerts that we went to that for some reason I don't remember that I went to that concert.
Yeah, I didn't either until you said it.
But yeah, I was like, I've definitely seen Tower of Power. So
That
they
was 2015.
that's right. So Tower of Power was the touring horn section for the band, and then they ceased their work with them in '94, and they were replaced by Marvin McFadden, Ron Stallings, and Rob Sudeth as the new horn section, and the band called them the Sports Section. Love that.
Love that. So now we get to the 2000s. Released on July 24th, 2001, Plan B, the name of the album, came out after a long hiatus. And this album did not chart on the Billboard 200. None of the singles made it onto the Hot 100. The band was now operating far outside the pop mainstream. I mean, it's the 2000s now. And, I mean, you got Justin Timberlake and stuff coming out. And Huey Lewis is old news at this point. The first single was Let Her Go and Start Over, which charted on adult contemporary radio but didn't crack any major charts. And this album is mostly for like diehard fans. Prior to this album, Chris Hayes retired from the band to spend more time with his family, and he was replaced by Steph Burns.
Dude, how great would it have been if they rebranded themselves as Huey Lewis and the Old News? And this year,
That's great.
that would have been such a good change. Like
Has been Lewis in the news.
yeah. Oh, that would have been so good. Like,
I hate that term, but it's still applicable. But yeah, they're just, doing their thing. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, right. Moving along, after another big hiatus, they returned with a cover album. Another one after 9 years? So Soulsville was released on October 18th, 2010. This time they focus entirely on Stax Records classics. Think Otis Redding, Booker T, and the MGs. A lot of the people that the Doobie Brothers really enjoyed around that time. I remember them being big fans. Or not the Doobie Brothers. CCR. CCR was big fans of Booker T and the MGs and Otis Redding. And so this album debuted at number 121 on the Billboard 200. It got solid reviews from critics. The album didn't produce any charting singles, but songs like Respect Yourself and Just One More Day were praised by longtime fans. And it was more of a love letter to soul than a commercial comeback. So another album that big fans of the band are going to enjoy, but it's not going to break outside of that small group of super fans. And this album is like, I listened to it one time through, and there's no real song I would go back to. I definitely prefer their originals over their covers.
Yeah. That brings us to their final album so far, Weather, was released on February 14th, 2020, just before COVID, so it wasn't actually a COVID album. It only had 7 songs and was recorded just before Huey was diagnosed with, I'm not allowed to say this, Meniere's disease? It looks French. Meniere's disease?
Meniere's, yeah.
Meniere's.
Meniere's
The album
disease.
debuted at number 195 on the Billboard 200. So it's made it, but barely, and didn't have any official charting singles. So the lead track was While We're Young, which got some more adult contemporary airplay, and the album serves as a bittersweet goodbye. And though it didn't chart well, it was a heartfelt send-off for fans. So that may likely be their last album ever. So go give that a listen. It's called Weather.
Yeah, so real quick, for anybody who doesn't know Meniere's disease, Huey is basically deaf in one ear. And it affects all kinds of things, like it can affect your speech.
Like balance and stuff.
Yep, yeah. Balance. You get heavy vertigo. It feels like one of your ears is like blocked up, like physically blocked up, as well as it's not full deaf, but you hear like a flatline bass note basically out of your ear, like just a low tone. This is the description when I watched a doctor talk about it just to see. And they said but tenor notes come through like sporadically weird. So it'd be very hard to do music like this, especially after like having both your ears and whatnot. Like it probably affects his tone, pitch, just his ability to really interact with music the way he used to. So sounds like that was probably the death sentence for Huey Lewis and the News' music careers. But this album, I actually really like it, to be honest. It's got some good songs. It's a little more laid back, not quite as like heavy rock. It's a little more chill, but I really enjoyed it. It was a good send off. Great way to end there.
Yeah, love that. So we're gonna skip for now the wild stories and fun little trivia facts. We save those for the bonus episodes typically. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check out our Patreon. Patreon.com/Melomaniax. We're going to jump into their influence and legacy. So despite what hipsters may think, Huey Lewis and the News were musicians. They wrote their own songs. They played their own instruments. Their live shows were tight. Their production was clean. They've influenced everyone from Bruno Mars to Ben Rector. They also helped revive interest in a lot of classic genres like soul, doo-wop, and early rock through their covers and arrangements and when they dove into the cover space. While the band never officially broke up, they've been largely inactive due to Huey's hearing loss, but their influence is fully baked into pop culture. From Back to the Future to every 80s nostalgia playlist ever, they were kind of like the sound of the 80s in a way. Like they nailed it, but it holds up. There's a lot of the 80s sounds that are cheesy now. Huey Lewis is not that. They hold up today, at least to me, just as much as they did then. They really, and I think that's because they are those musicians, right? You can't pull that off if you're just, going and singing 80s pop, but they just do it in a way that is funky and soulful, and it's their sound. They have their sound.
Yeah, I kind of group Huey Lewis and the News with, if you're looking for like similarities to their 80s sound, think like 80s Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, that kind of stuff. So like really, like the very musically intense, but like good pop songs. And so Huey Lewis and the News never pretended to be anything they weren't. They weren't mysterious, brooding, or edgy. They were just fun. They made music that made you dance, sing, and smile, and they did it really well. And their career is a reminder that you don't need to be tortured or tragic to be timeless. Sometimes all you need is a good hook, a sax solo, and a front man with a wink in his eye.
Love that.
Right.
We're going to get into our ratings now. So we rank every band here, personal ratings. Ashton does it. I do it out of 5. And we have 6 categories. We score each of those out of 5. So let's start with creativity. So how creative were they in their space amongst their peers? I mean, I always know a Huey Lewis song when it comes on, even if I've never heard the song. I feel like that's a 5 for me.
Oh, nice. I'm like at a 3 or a 4. Obviously Huey Lewis, I feel like Huey isn't like the most phenomenal singer, but his tone is so recognizable. So I feel like I get what you're saying. Like I can hear a Huey Lewis in the News song, but
But it's not good singing. It's creativity.
it's yeah. I was gonna say I know it's just like I guess they do sound different, but then again, I feel like there's some similarities to some of the bands around them. I'll sit at a 4.
I just feel like if you were to make a massive '80s playlist and sprinkle in a few Huey Lewis songs that I've never heard before, I'd be able to be like, that's Huey Lewis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where I could not do that with some other '80s artists. I could with like Phil Collins because again, he's got a really recognizable voice. But some other ones might be tough for me. Now, Evolution's the next one. So this is how creative they were against themselves. Creativity is kind of how creative you are against your peers. Evolution's how creative you are against yourself over time. This is where it'd be like a 3 or 4 for me, I'd say, because they kind of had their sound and kind of kept that sound. You know, obviously until the later career, but then it dropped off. So it's like,
Yeah, I'm at a 3 out of 5 for Evolution as well. They had their sound, they rode their sound. Yeah, you can discuss the cover albums a little bit, I guess, but it's still their sound just applied to a new song. So I think they knew who they were and they just kept that up, which is not a bad thing. Like
can't
we always
fault them
say.
for that.
Yeah.
Now we get into the replayability though, and this is a 5 for me with this band.
Yeah, I'm at a 5 for replayability as well. I can always go back to some Huey Lewis.
Anytime it's on, and this is rare for me. I will not be skipping it or turning it off. Even with bands I like, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to listen to this right now. Like,
yeah.
But Huey Lewis, I'm just bobbing my head like this just feels right.
Right? Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'm with you on there.
Now, cultural impact, they were widely underappreciated. This puts them at a it would be like a 1 or a 2, but they had the Back to the Future thing, which was one of the biggest movies of all time. That's going to squeak them up to a 3 for me. But yeah, a band I feel like when people talk about the 80s, you're not going to hear them bring up Huey Lewis until, you know, if you ask them just list bands from the 80s, like they're, you know, especially in pop, it's going to be 10 to 15 bands before they get to Huey Lewis. You know what I mean? Or artists, not bands.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm at a 3 as well. And that's just for like, you know, like 84 to 86, like that range, they were giant. But outside of that, you know, they had albums all throughout the 80s, through the entire 80s, and you only really even associate them with just a couple years out of the 80s as being huge and megastars. So they had big cultural impact when they, you know, for a very small amount of time. But I'd say, like you said, 3 out of 5, just because people kind of don't think about them as much as they should.
Yeah, that brings us to emotional connection. I can't say that I've ever really thought about my connection to a Huey Lewis song, so I'm going to give them kind of in the middle at a 3 there. They're not unrelatable, but they're not something I'm crazy relatable to.
Yep, I'm going to put a 3 out of 5 as well. Just for the kind of the same reason, like I don't really feel anything emotionally when I listen to them specifically. Yeah. They don't have any like, also they don't really have like a ton of like deep material or anything to connect with. They're a very goofy, smiley, happy
like fun,
band. Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of just
which
fun,
I guess you could connect to that too, and that's why I gave them a 3 out of 1. Now we're at nostalgia factor, and this I can't explain, but I'm giving them a 5 out of 5 just because they have a nostalgic sound, and I do have some nostalgia with like, you know, hearing their songs at certain points and connecting them with things in my own life. So that's why I'm going with a 5 there for nostalgia factor.
And I am at a 4 out of 5 for the nostalgia factor. A lot of same things, you know. I never really heard them too old. The only time I'd really heard them that I could associate with hearing them in the past is from the movie Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And then even like American Psycho as well, when I finally watched that for the first time, and I was like, oh my God,
I still haven't seen that one.
The news. Dude, great movie.
That's Christian Bale, right?
Yeah. And it's got the guy you like, the singer 30 Seconds to Mars or whatever.
Oh, Jared Leto?
Yeah, Jared Leto's in it.
Oh, I don't like him that much.
Oh. I thought you were a fan of his, but Jared Leto is
I think he's a fantastic singer and a really good actor, but he seems like a complete douche.
Jared Leto is the guy that Christian Bale murders during the Hip to Be Square scene.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to see Jared Leto get an axe to the head, well, you don't watch it happen. It's just assumed when the blood splatters on his face from the other angle. But it's a
Oh, I
great
see.
scene. Great scene. Great movie.
Yeah, it's one of those top movies I always hear about. There's a ton. I haven't seen most famous movies, and that's one of them.
That was one of the ones that I sat down. I was like, you know what? I hear nothing but I hear about all the time. I guess I'll watch it. I enjoyed it. Like a good
Nice.
satire.
Well, that brings our totals. Ashton's coming in at a 3.7 out of 5, and I'm coming in at a 4 out of 5 total.
Wow.
Total ranking.
Big score from Dallas today.
Yeah, I think it might be my highest score.
If not one of, for sure. That is a really good score.
It's a good score for a good band.
Damn, Huey's gonna smile hearing that he got a 4 out of 5 from Dallas. Whenever that news comes across his desk, it's gonna put a little smile on his face. But that wraps us up today for Huey Lewis in the news. For all those Patreon members, make sure you hop over and check out the bonus episode where we talk a little bit more about some stories, some trivia, and we'll talk about those couple of those lawsuits that we briefly talked about today. So,
all right, we'll see you guys there.